Good morning, Chattanooga. Welcome to Legal Bytes. This is Jim McCoon, your host. I'm an attorney with McCoon, Williams, Ashley, and Stanley here in Chattanooga. Our guest today is Clay Whitaker. How are you doing, Clay?
I'm fine, Jim.
And welcome to another segment of Legal Bytes here on Nooga Radio, AM 1240, FM 92.7. And listeners, today I want to talk about something that, well, it was just raised in an ad just before the news, and that was an ad for Barracuda Essentials with Office 365 for cybersecurity was the issue I think I heard.
And we're not plugging Barracuda, are we, Jim?
No, we're not plugging Barracuda, but we are talking about the issues that require us to purchase Barracuda, and that is cybercrime, cyber claims, and what's going on. In fact, what got one of these things that got on my mind was when I was signing a check yesterday to one of our vendors for providing our firewall and our protections for the law firm. And, you know, why are we having to do all that? And really this affects every person that's even got a cell phone. Your identifying markers, your data, your financial records. My wife shops more online than she does going to the mall. We go to restaurants and we use our debit cards, our credit cards. I mean, just everyday part of life. We've got our data out there and we're vulnerable. Clay, I don't know how much you think about this, but it's kind of scary. And in fact, I was talking to a gentleman over the weekend. He's in analytics. He's based out of Philadelphia. And he was explaining to me that one of their subsidiaries actually has 21 data markers on every person in the United States that they have identifiers and they use this information and data to sell to manufacturers and industries who are developing new products and trying to position those products so we'll buy them. So our data markers are already out there just by what we're doing legitimately. But then we've also got people who are doing it illegitimately, gathering our information. Is that fact correct, Clay?
That's it. And Jim, you know, it's just has to do with the shift in our economy. As we've shifted from being a manufacturing economy to a economy based upon service and an economy that works on technology and information. These things are necessary in order to be able to conduct that style of an economy. And as a result of that, just as you pointed out, it creates opportunity for criminals. As we know, the old way that you would commit crimes related to finance would be, for instance, you mentioned checks. Well, almost no one writes checks anymore, but if you did, the way that used to be done is people would forge checks, or they would use bank numbers to be able to access your account, take money using a forged or written document. Well, that really doesn't happen much anymore. Today, the other way, of course, would have been actual theft of cash. Well, since we don't use cash, we don't have that problem. So we have these numbers, these accounts, these identifiers, as the federal statute very clearly says, you have identifiers. It's really the term of art that we're starting to use to protect certain kinds of information. And in fact, we were going to talk today about certain federal crimes and, of course, local things that we've seen that have occurred where people have been abused in terms of the use of those identifiers, taking of their money, their financial wherewithal, and identity theft, as we've come to call it, as well as just the issues you've mentioned before regarding civil claims or claims where you might be able to recover some of those losses that you've had.
So really the development of technology has required the criminal statutes to try to grow to cover what people with their imaginations have been able to start doing to illegitimately take funds a new way.
I think so. And we've heard people who've openly admitted to committing crimes. They think that's apparently part of this sort of age of the computer that we have, being I could say adventurous on the computer, entering into certain activities that would ordinarily be constituted a crime. At the time, they may not be crimes because there were no statutes about that.
Sure.
And so,
how many teenagers have stolen music where they've downloaded music illegitimately because they found a way to get around maybe the passwords and the like?
It may not always be teenagers, Jim.
Well, don't make any confessions here on that.
Not me, Jim. I don't confess.
Or how many of the college kids now are downloading and obtaining versions of movies that they're watching in the fraternity houses and sorority houses now that they haven't paid for.
It's very common.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are things that are happening. So theft is out there. Some of it is more culpable than others. And I know that this is an area that you practice in a good bit. What type of criminal statutes do we have out there that can actually address the things that people take from us today?
Well, so Jim, I wanted to talk today about the federal law. I do a lot of federal law, and I practice a lot of federal criminal defense law. So there are a number of them, but the three main ones I think that address the issues most people experience. So it's a Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. That is 18 USC 1030. It's in the same category of crimes as bank fraud. There's also the crime called the Counterfeit Access Device Act, which is 18 USC 1029. And then there is the fraud in connection with identifying documents or identification documents, which is one of the things that we talked about. That's 18 USC 1028. All of them are aiming at certain conduct that criminals enter into that the law has tried to interdict to prevent the kinds of losses people suffer. So obviously anyone that's been involved with an aggravated circumstances related to identity theft. There are actually two kinds of crimes. One is aggravated, one is ordinary identity theft. If you're the victim of it, you don't know the distinction. You just have suffered the terrible problems that result from having your identity compromised. Those numbers, those identifiers that you mentioned that your contact had.
Right. Like I've got a good friend that they went to a restaurant and used a credit card, debit card, I'm not sure which, that they had never used for. It was a fresh, one they'd just gotten. And within 2 days, they were getting a phone call from First Tennessee Bank Fraud Division wanting to know if they had purchased items in the Caribbean, up in Canada and the like. And suddenly their credit card, which was brand new and had only been used at this restaurant, was being used to make purchases all over online. What would of your statutes would that violate, and how would that get prosecuted?
Well, that's dealing with probably two, one of them being the use of false identification. So it's fraud in connection with identifying documents. And basically, there are three ways that the statute addresses that. One is the actual production of false documents. And so the law says basically that a person who does this crime produces a false document, and that is without lawful authority, and they knowingly do it. It's not something that's an accident. And then the third part of that is that it appears to be issued under the authority of a specific issuing agency. So whether it's the United States or a state agency or some other agency, these terms are very broad. And because of the way that these criminals that use these types of access to commit fraud, the laws have been made to be broad so that you don't have to continue to go back and update them to include the new ways, as you mentioned, the creative ways that these criminals use to access people's identifiers.
Yeah, because I understand from the investigators that were talking to these people that the waiter actually took the card and used their phone to photograph the front and back of their card, had the information, and then proceeded to use that information.
Well, and so the other part of it, there's a separate crime for possession of the false identification, and then the third crime is the transfer of it. So all three of those may have been committed, as well as the use of those false documents may be also used for obtaining information by computer or for financial institutions. That's a separate crime, and it could also be a crime that's related to the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and the use of certain access devices by the individual criminal to be able to access your financial information. So it depends on what they did with the information. Certainly possessing it is enough. The attempt to possess it is enough. Anyone that helps them is committing a crime, and the transfer of that information is a crime. So just in terms of all of those things, there are a number of different ways that can permutate into additional criminal conduct, and the responsibility for that. Certainly the person who's experiencing that identity theft would only know that they've taken my information, they've sold it, used it, bought Caribbean things or Canadian things, whatever they may be.
Right. So let's go from the more the simple item. And callers, if you've got any questions about the topic we're discussing today, our call-in number is 423-800-8949. And we'll be happy to take your call. And Clay, you'll be happy to answer any questions they might have.
I'd love to, Jim.
All right. So, we've talked about how your credit card, and I know that I've read about these people that go in to buy gas at a convenience store, and all of a sudden all their card data is taken because someone has stuck a device inside the card slot on the gas pump, and they're able to electronically pull all your information off just by having this little device or wire device stuck into the gas pump.
Yeah, Jim. And so really our Congress has acted in a way to protect that information, and they've done it in this broad fashion, like I've indicated. Most of the time, you've got three different groups that are being protected by the statute. The first is the United States government. It's illegal to access federal computers without authorization or to exceed the authorization you were granted. So
right.
Sometimes people have access, but they go farther than they should. Doing that, you might get in trouble. And as a result of that, the statutes aim to protect it. The second group is financial institutions because they have your files or records. The third group that would be protected would be the individual consumer. And so the way that our statutes operate, they all work off of either the federal government's own protection of its own computers, the financial computers, or the effect that either interstate commerce would have on the particular transaction that's the subject of the crime, or it can be international. So the way that our law is working now, because as you know, there are a number of international groups. We hear about it daily, people hacking emails, hacking into accounts. The law now allows for the prosecution of people outside of the country as a result of the extraterritorial effect of these laws, which is a little bit unusual. And of course, we've had other call-in shows where we've discussed the Commerce Clause before, and usually that's the way that our Congress deals with particular laws that affect our day-to-day lives between states. So the Commerce Clause is able to, we're able to extend the effect or the legislation between different states based upon the ability that's set out in the Constitution for Congress to affect commerce or to regulate commerce.
So we've gone now beyond just credit card theft and that data. We're talking about actual computer hacks.
Yeah, it can be those things. And so, you and I were talking, and you mentioned before the most common thing we've heard recently is there have been a rash of cases where people have gone and used their debit card or their credit card at a local gas station. Well, if you look at all of the effects that has, the different groups that it affects, first, of course, it affects the consumer. And usually this is done as a result of having a remote scanner or some sort of hardware that is a scanner that's been inserted into the gas pump itself, so the reader. So in case you all don't know this, you need to look this up. There are certainly lots of references that you can have to this. We've got a caller, I think.
Yeah, Clay, if you'll hold 1 second,
sure.
Let me get this call. Hello, caller. Welcome to Legal Bytes. You have a question for Mr. Whitaker?
I was actually hacked about 20 years ago. They took over $5,000 out of my account in pesos and paid their electric and other utility bills. The bank, however, doesn't identify, even if they know who the party is, because I think if they were local, we'd probably go over there with a baseball bat. So we're never really informed about what happened. Now, I got my money back in 2 days, and I think most people get their money back.
Right. The banks are very good about that.
And I have another comment after this. The question is, do we have any recourse in that to determine or find out if these individuals are being prosecuted to have some sense of justice? It's almost like being raped. Okay, you gave me their money back, but I want to know who did it. And the banks are silent on this. And on the other thing, where it says to regulate commerce, I always took that to mean to ensure the smooth flow, not having the federal tyrants determine rules that tie up commerce and enrich themselves. And the other thing is, I have a question on, I know this is off topic, the Fourth Amendment. Well, I read that as being that all searches are unreasonable. And the only way a search can be reasonable is via an impartial judge getting that information, that factual information, and setting out an order. But I read it as all searches being unreasonable. If they weren't all unreasonable, then it would be subjective. So I know we're a little off topic on that, but I like your comments. I'll listen on the radio. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, caller. So the first part that you'd ask about was in regards to what can you do regarding your own recovery and the information that you might be able to get for the purpose of either prosecution or maybe even a separate civil claim, because we do believe that there are opportunities for individuals who've suffered loss to be able to reclaim those losses against different groups. This is a large topic. So one of the things I might say is that in terms of prosecution, at least in the federal system where most of the legislation is, each states also have it, but the federal court is the best place for that prosecution. The United States Attorney's Office usually has groups that are specialized, set up groups to deal with computer crime. I can just tell you that what I would consider small crime, it may be bad for you, it may be personally a great loss, but unless it's dealing with large sums of money, most of the time you're not going to get a lot of federal involvement in the computer interdiction. So these groups are work off of particular hot button issues, large crimes, large groups, and those prosecutions are done. And I think you've seen that in the prosecution of certain individuals, certainly like Guccifer. You may have heard of him. He's certainly one that was involved in large-scale hacking. So it's difficult sometimes to find out the information about the person who actually has done this. The other part of it is that because of the issue of anonymity, it's difficult for the prosecution to occur. You've got to have the specialized law enforcement tools to locate, because most of the criminals that are involved in this are sophisticated enough that they do use ways to prevent their detection using anonymity as a shield to protect them. And they use IP servers in different locations, spread out their contact in the internet, and use that anonymity to be able to commit their crime.
Well, it's not just that. They also use innocent individuals where they'll put out advertisements sort of like even around the United States where they're going to do a hacking and possibly try to funnel funds. And it'll look like a legitimate opportunity to make money from home. And there's going to be certain money that's going to be paid into your account. You're to transfer those funds upon a certain time to another account, and you'll get paid for your services. And people across the country, maybe because it's easy money, maybe because they're naive, maybe because they really don't care about whether it's criminal or not, are involved in that. So you've got levels that provide further anonymity for the people who are actually doing what is illegal.
And the other part, Jim, I think you and I have talked about this, is there's not a great deal of incentive, it appears, in our financial industry to catch the small identity theft, if you could call it that. Our system's set up primarily for insurance to repay the financial institutions to make sure that your money as a user of the system is taken care of. But they sort of have built into this idea that we're going to have losses. It's part of it. You just can't stop it. It's like death and taxes. You're going to have these kinds of crimes committed. I don't buy that. I think that's wrong, but that is the way the system is set up. You and I have talked, Jim, and our firm being a firm that handles injuries, personal injuries, property damage, business litigation related to the recovery of losses, if they're economic or strict liability and tort, that is product liability cases. This is the kind of case that you might be able to find that sort of liability based upon a new sort of theory in the law, that is the negligent enablement of cybercrime. And that is, if you operate an end user location, whether it is a particular location, a premises, that is, if it's a gas station like we were talking about before, or a restaurant, hotel, and you have some access point, a device that uses a scanner or some other piece of technology to take the financial information, and they don't have appropriate security. And even if you're online and you have some entity that uses technology that doesn't protect your security, you may be able to pursue that deal of negligence, and the fact that they haven't used either the appropriate technology to protect your identity, or they don't meet the custom in the industry to protect your identity. So, caller, you may be able to have that sort of protection by the civil law as well. And that's one of the reasons we need the civil law to push legislation to protect the individual, because the big system really looks out for the big man and it doesn't look out for the individual.
That's true. And in my own experience, a few years ago, we were hired, or actually I was hired by an insurance carrier that provides coverage to financial institutions. And in that situation, we had a financial institution that over a weekend was hacked by some cyber warriors out of the Slavic nations. And as a result, over the weekend, through a series of transactions, approximately 1.2 million was transferred out of the financial institution's accounts all across the country. And then from those accounts to Europe and to other places out of the country into Africa. So all of a sudden, the funds are gone. There's anonymity as to who took them, but the accounts were just, for lack of a better term, raped to the extent that 1.2 million was taken out without authority from those accounts. Now, in that situation, there were several steps taken. One was, of course, to initially try to do an investigation into clawback funds before they could get out of reach. And in that, due to quick work, we were able to basically claw back approximately 60% of the funds that had been taken over the weekend. So from going from 1.2, we were down closer to somewhere in the neighborhood of 400,000 in loss. But with respect to those funds, then we started looking at who was responsible, because the institution had safeguards, just like all of us have safeguards that have businesses where we've got computer systems and technology in use, like I was talking at the very beginning of the hour, with respect to having firewalls in place, encryption in place, various steps. And then we hire professionals who are supposed to be providing IP services to us and looking after it, because certainly we don't know enough about this technical data to be able to protect ourselves. So we hire professionals to do that. And in doing that, we found that the service provider with respect to the firewall technology had been negligent in protecting our systems. And then we also found that another intermediary in the Fed system, basically for the financial institutions, had breached a inter financial institution contract. And so we were able to bring claims against that other institution for breaching their contractual obligations to us to protect us with respect to certain funds and sizes of transactions. And we were able to bring an action against the software service provider with respect to the breaches and their negligence regarding our firewall protections that we would have in place. So there are things you can do, but it's extremely expensive, extremely time consuming, very difficult. And we had to actually go to 2 separate counties and 2 separate venues to be able to bring the litigation to try to resolve it. Again, this is Legal Bytes. This is Jim McCoon, and we are now to the bottom of the half hour. We'll be back with you, and we'll continue this discussion and go into other topics related to this discussion after the news on the other side of the half hour. And we look forward to having you join us.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. 3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
A car chase in Hamilton County took cops and sheriffs all the way from Red Bank down to East Ridge and ended with a smashed up car. Cops say nobody was hurt in the car crash at the end of the chase, and one man was taken into custody. County Mayor Jim Coppinger said on Tuesday, "We have to change the negative perception the public has of the Hamilton County schools." He says he's absolutely in favor of raises for classroom teachers, but not for giving a dime to administrators. An inmate from Catoosa County has gone missing and apparently walked off of a work detail on Monday. Brian Duke was apparently taken away in an unidentified car by an unidentified man. He's 49 years old with blonde hair and green eyes and has a tattoo of a raven on his left shoulder. The Tennessee House passed a resolution to amend the Tennessee Constitution to add this line: "We recognize that our liberties do not come from governments, but from Almighty God." Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Expect lots of sunshine and very warm weather out there through your afternoon. Highs back into the mid and upper 80s tonight. Fair, low 60 to 63. For Thursday, partly cloudy, still looking dry. A little on the hot side. Highs upper 80s with scattered showers and thinner showers rolling in Friday. Get to JCPenney's biggest sale of the year, just in time for Mother's Day. Now through Sunday, get up to 50% off throughout the store. That's getting your pennies worth now through this weekend at JCPenney. And I'm Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr. On Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
McCune Williams and Ashley PLLC offers a full array of legal services to meet the needs of businesses and individuals. Our attorneys represent diverse backgrounds, interests, and legal emphasis, but we share one common goal: providing the highest quality legal services to our clients through the combination of our talents, experience, and expertise. In each case, we strive to tailor those services to meet each client's specific circumstances. Business law, business organization, civil litigation, commercial litigation, conservatorship and guardian law, bankruptcy law, just to name a few. With over 188 years of combined experience, McCune Williams Ashley PLLC is here to help you and your business succeed. MWALawfirm.com. That's MWALawfirm.com. Call 423-756-6400. That's 423-756-6400.
Picture that curl of steam rising from your fresh-made pizza. And in a flash, let it take you aloft, teasing all your senses. I'm talking about Jet's Pizza. If you eat out at Jet's in Hickson or take home your steaming deep dish square pizza, you'll love Jet's. They use only the best ingredients in a family recipe. Also try the cheesy bread, wings, chicken, or bread with bacon, antipasta, or Greek salad. Jet's Pizza at Bilo near the S-Curves. Open till 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday. You can order online or have it delivered. jetspizza.com. That's jetspizza.com. Or call them now. They'll have it ready when you get there. 757-1616. That's 757-1616.
Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
Need a tiller to get things going for the spring? Spiff up your porch, maybe your deck? Come on by and get a pressure washer at Action Rental. Family in town, need some tables and chairs for an event? Come on by and see us, Action Rental. This is Dan at Action Rental on Lee Highway. Come by and see me, Action Rentals.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
Welcome back, Chattanooga, to Legal Bytes. This is your host, Jim McCoon, and our guest today is Clay Whitaker. And we've been talking during the first half hour, and I'm going to continue the conversation today about something that affects everyone from their grandmother with her cell phone to your wife on the computer with her credit card to your business and the systems in with which you try to run your production, run your accounts, pay your vendors, your banking systems, everything. And that is cyber crimes and cyber claims. And Clay, we've covered the fact that there are a number of cyber crimes out there, and especially in the federal form where they're getting prosecuted. And you've had some experience on that side of the ball.
I sure have, Jim. As a nationally certified trial lawyer, I have to plug myself there. I've had a lot of experience in regards to particular federal crimes and the defense of defendants there in our local courts, also the Northern District of Georgia. And I've also licensed in Alabama as well. So we'd love to be able to help you with our law firm. It's McCoon Williams and Ashley, 756-6400. If you've got those kind of cases, I think we got
I think we've got a caller. Hold on a second. Good morning, caller. You're with Legal Bytes. Do you have a question?
Yes. So I've heard y'all discussing cyber crimes, and one thing I haven't heard y'all touch on is social media. Social media makes you vulnerable to identity theft because of the amount of information you put out there. But in addition, I was wondering if you could be sued for something you post online. For instance, if you were to post something disparaging about someone on social media, could you be sued for something like defamation?
Well, yeah, caller, the answer is that certainly if you post something that's false online about someone, and that's always the test for that sort of crime, that's a damage to someone's reputation, you certainly could have a liability for that information you posted. The question is, what's the damage? It's always the issue related to any sort of damage to reputation, is you have to actually establish that there's something that's happened to the person. That doesn't mean you can't get sued, but it is one of the factors. And of course, Tennessee has its own statutes that relate to the use of internet communication, other kinds of communication, where you can either harass someone or you can stalk them, and that can occur online as well. So it's never really a good idea.
Bullying.
The bullying.
Online bullying.
It's not a good idea to do these things. Certainly, it's the hallmark of a civilized culture that we don't devolve into this name-calling, gossiping, things that you see all the time. And of course, anyone that's interested in their freedom should always realize, and of course we've seen this in the news recently, that continued access to these so-called social media is really just a spying tool for our government and for other people to be involved in disclosing the day-to-day details of your life. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you wouldn't want to do it either.
Right. And I might add that as he was talking about damages, if you're talking about a defamation where you're talking about usually a slander or a libel, and it's interesting because when you put it in social media, even though you're saying it slanderously, you're really creating a libel because you're putting out there in writing. You've got to have damage. We used to have a concept in law called libel per se, where just by the nature of what you said, there was an actionable claim that you could bring, and damages were imputed or inferred. But that is no longer the case in Tennessee. In Tennessee now, you've got to establish actual damages resulting, which means that people have to change their opinion of you. Your reputation has to be sullied. You have to have lost a job. There has to be something that you can link on a nexus to the defamatory statement and how it's affected you. But I would suggest to you that despite that, there still is a separate claim for invasion of privacy. If they are disclosing on the internet information that either you gave to them in a confidence, or information that they obtained either through a hack or through going through a lot of data on you, and then they put that out there, there's an invasion of privacy claim that it would be separate and apart from a defamation claim. And that invasion of privacy, as long as you're not a public official. Now, if you put something out there about our county mayor or our city mayor, he probably doesn't have the same type of claim, because there it has to be intentional. It can't just be negligent, and there's a higher standard with respect to the claim. But with respect to a private citizen, you've got a claim that might be worthwhile in pursuing from the standpoint of privacy.
And of course, isn't it true, Jim, that particularly with related to politicians, the truth is always a defense?
Well, that's true on private citizens too, though. So, all right, caller, did I answer your question?
It sure did. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in. And for those of you who have got another question for Mr. Whitaker or myself, our number is 423-800-8949 here at Nooga Radio, and this is Legal Bytes. Now, we were talking about the crimes and like, but in the civil arena, like the case that I was mentioning during the first half hour, where we had a hack of a financial institution by some people from Eastern Europe, was the best that could be determined based upon the investigations. You get into trying to bring claims, and the first and most targeted individuals in that situation would be the people that you've hired to provide you with protection. And that would be your software service provider and or the actual system you've used for your firewall protections, for your securities, so that when they get breached, there's a question, why were they breached and how strong should they have been? And I will tell you, the listener, that as a businessman, you really need to consider how you go about hiring and providing the type of technology and the services that you need for your protections. Because a couple of reasons. One is we are not knowledgeable in the area. We as businessmen are not knowledgeable. And so you're dealing with a vendor of a technology or a service that they are the only people who have it. It's much like going to a physician or a doctor. You know, when he tells you your gallbladder needs to go out, how can you argue with them? Well, it's the same way with these IP providers. They're going to be the people that know what you need, what their technology can do, when they can provide it to you, and what its vulnerabilities are and the like. And you have to rely to a large extent on what they say, unless you hire your own IP service professional to help you negotiate and acquire that type of protection.
Well, Jim, what I hear you, my keen legal ear hears you talking about, is the issue of malpractice or some sort of breach, either misrepresentation or breach of contract or breach of warranties related to the exercise of someone's professional acumen, whether that is in the computer field as a hardware installer, software installer, or the overall technology field.
Yes. And that's where, you know, I think that you used the word malpractice or professional malpractice. That is an area that some courts have recognized, but it's very limited. It's something that I think we really need to develop for the purposes of IP professionals. And let me explain why. When you get into these service protections that you've got, the security systems, you're usually dealing with very sophisticated companies if you've got a sophisticated business yourself. And so you're dealing with a contract where they may provide multiple services. So you may have a master agreement, and then you'll have separate individual contracts under the master agreement for your firewall, for some of your data systems and the like. And so they're all under this umbrella master agreement, which will have waivers of liability, limitations of damages that you can seek, trying to limit you to, you know, if there is a claim, to what you've just paid for the service, much less the damages you've incurred. There'll be several contractual limitations on any type of claim that you can bring, as well as possibly trying to put you in a jurisdiction where they are, which may be New York, which may be Minnesota, Wisconsin, somewhere other than where your business is here in either Tennessee or Georgia or Alabama. The other side of it is a lot of the representations they'll make about the quality and the capabilities of what they're providing to you with respect to their systems won't be in the sales agreement and won't be in the service contract. So, and there'll be a provision in the agreements that will basically say that any discussions or negotiations are no longer binding, that the four corners of the document is all we're going to look to for the purposes of breach and enforcement.
Well, Jim, we got a question for you. So, what does someone do? So we mentioned professional liability. So if you're an attorney or a doctor or a dentist, we know that those people have been licensed by the state. How do you know that you've got a good IT or technology person? How would you find out?
Well, that's one of the difficulties, because, you know, there's not really a licensure. They get certified in certain types of systems, like you may be Microsoft certified to handle certain types of their software. But there is nothing out there that will tell you that they are of any type of level of quality other than basically word of mouth, reputation in the community and the like.
Professional organizations.
Right. You can go to professional organizations, but there is no licensing board such as we have professionally in the legal field, or such as physicians have or accountants have, where you can actually determine that they've have met some type of minimum standard of competence.
So isn't it a good idea for particularly business owners who are getting ready to invest substantial sums in technology, software, computers, hardware of any kind, to involve not only their own experts in the field for the purpose of helping them to select this particular thing, but maybe even contact an attorney to help them guide them through that process so they'll know what things they should be aware of if there is a failure in the system.
Absolutely. I know in just a few years ago, when we were going to electronic medical records, we represent several physician groups, and we actually were involved in negotiating the contracts for some of these groups to actually make the conversions over to the electronic medical records, and what the providers' systems and capabilities were to be, and what our recourses were if they failed to meet it, and when they were going to be online, because of course the physician groups had times that they had to be in compliance. Make sure that there were certain firewalls and protections because of HIPAA and medical privacy. All those things we were involved in handling from the end user standpoint, and making sure that the systems that were being put in place and the conversion of the records was being handled appropriately. Likewise, with business professionals, when they have an industry that they're handling and they're needing to renegotiate or expand their business, they need to bring in I think their own IP professional to tell them, basically scope out what they need. And one of the big issues that I've read about is the problem of basically under providing by a lot of these software companies and hardware providers, because they under provide to meet just what you've got or your needs are today, because that allows them to keep the price down, but it doesn't allow for any growth. So you need to have your own representative from a technical side determine what your needs are both today and in the foreseeable future, know where technology is going so that you can make on the fly in the future changes, and your system is capable of making the changes because of foreseen changes that are coming, and help you negotiate what is appropriate as far as timelines and the like, and firewalls. And then once you've gotten there, then I think you should have your company counsel assist you with from the standpoint of negotiating the terms of the agreement, because these standard agreements that are out there, and we've litigated them, are not appropriate. One size does not fit all. And oftentimes they are so one-sided that it leaves you relatively with no remedies or few remedies. And again, that's why I'm really glad to see these professional malpractice claims in the IP field against technology professionals growing in the law, because it allows you to get out of the contract and allows you to get out of the defenses that they've got set up under these contracts, and puts you more to a standard of care and what is expected of that professional when they're rendering the service for you. And that standard of care goes beyond just the capabilities of what you're receiving, but also determining what you need to receive and making sure it's like a doctor. You know, a doctor is not only potentially responsible for what he does, but he's responsible for making the initial diagnosis to determine what you need. Well, that's the same way with these technology professionals. When they come into your company and they look at, and you're telling them the problems, we can't fill orders for our customers, we've grown too fast, our systems are depleted and just not sufficient. Excuse me. They need to be able to sit down and diagnose your needs, know where you need to go, and then be able to provide the systems and the hardware and software that can meet those needs. And those are things that are not going to be in the contract. The contract's going to address just what you've received. And so we need to have this new theory of law with respect to professional negligence for intellectual property providers in place. And I'm really glad to see that growing area of the law.
Well, Jim, we'd like to invite the listening audience, if you are a business owner or someone in the field that needs the protection and needs the advice of counsel regarding these issues, we certainly are capable of handling the issues related to compliance and helping businesses grow in this area and receive the protection they need and make sure that they're not leaving themselves open to liability related to technology and computer software.
That's absolutely true. And we'll also take your calls here today. And the number here at the station, again, is 423-800-8949. And if you can't get in, or you're tied up where you can't ask Clay a question that you may have, or myself, our office number is 423-756-6400. and we'll be happy to talk to you off air or on air about the questions you've got.
So, Jim, you mentioned earlier about the issue of compliance, and one of the other fields that sort of we've had some experience with is very important in this day and age, particularly as it relates to computer crime or cyber crime, is the field of compliance, particularly as it relates to HIPAA. For those ladies and gentlemen in the listening audience that don't know what HIPAA is or what other privacy acts are in the federal system that require, and of course the state system also has privacy protections. But those things are important to consider because they relate to claim recovery for violations of your privacy, and particularly if you leave yourself open to cyber attacks, you may be subject to liability.
That's absolutely true. So there's not only from the standpoint of your protected medical information, as the term is used, but also your other markers and identifiers. I know, again, going back to the conversation I was having with the gentleman from Philadelphia about his analytics business, they also are able to gather medical information, but they do it in a rather unique way because of the HIPAA protections. They gather the data behind a firewall. So basically they know there are so many cancer cases in Hamilton County, Tennessee. There's so many gallbladder problems. There's so many brain injuries, and they can gather all the data with respect to a market or a geographic segment. But it's all behind a firewall because there is individual information related to each one of those maladies or health issues. And so what they do is through this firewall, they provide the marker information or characteristics with respect to there's so many types of cancers. They can't identify maybe the specifics, but they'll provide that kind of data over, and then they can accumulate this information that's basically characteristic free of the individual markers, but information that the community or the manufacturer of medical products may need, and they can package it and then provide it to industry for the purposes of developing and using it.
Well, if the ladies and gentlemen in the listening audience have been victims of cybercrime, identity theft, release of privacy information, or those identifiers that we talked about, they should give us a call, shouldn't they, Jim?
Absolutely.
756-6400, McCoon, Williams, Ashley, and Stanley. We'd be pleased to talk with you about any of your concerns that we've discussed, particularly here today. And if you have any planning in the future related to expansion of your business, compliance with any privacy issues, or make sure that your IT professional is acting professionally and not acting in a fashion that could cause damage to your business or to those in the public, please give us a call.
Yeah. Now, from the standpoint, I've got a question. This is in your bailiwick or your sweet spot. What can the victim of a cybercrime expect when this matter is getting prosecuted? Are they going to be kept abreast of what's happening by the federal or state prosecutors? Are they going to be involved? How much of a hassle or experience is it going to be for them?
Well, Jim, our time looks like it's running out. It's a big topic. I will just say this, that in the federal court system, there is a push to allow victims' rights to be taken into consideration at sentencing, including the payment of reparations and including having the amount of time that someone suffers as a result of having to repair their identity to be taken into account at sentencing and have it reflected in the amount of time that the criminal who has done these things to them receives as a sentence. So it is an important thing.
So it's true justice they're trying to get.
I think so. Everything except the cane. The cane might have helped, but they're not. They haven't gone that far yet.
All right. Well, Chattanooga, thank you for listening to us today again on Legal Bytes. This is Jim McCoon, your host. We'll be back next Wednesday with another topic in the legal arena to discuss that can have some application in your lives, in your children's lives, in your business, and something that hopefully you can take away and use. Thank you for joining us.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Your marriage is over. You've been abandoned, betrayed. You're angry, shattered, and heartbroken. Don't go it alone. When you are facing divorce, you need an experienced advocate to help protect your rights and future. And you need it from a man with a sympathetic heart, but a hard nose. Attorney Clay Whitaker will fight for you in this most confusing and bitter time in your life. Clay Whitaker, 756-6400.
Chattanooga's best kept secret, Boyd Speedway. Come see the fastest dirt late model drivers in the South compete for a purse every Saturday night. Pit gates open at 3, grandstand opens at 5. Racing starts at 7. Bring the whole family for a night of fun as they tear it up on the dirt track. Go to BoydSpeedway.net and check out the Dirt Simulator. BoydSpeedway.DirtSimulator.com. Chattanooga's best kept secret, Boyd Speedway. Fun-filled, outrageous racing. We'll see you Saturday night.
The UCRA Crate Late Model Event. Limited late models, crate late models, sportsman, hobby, and street stocks.
Boyd Speedway. Window Depot of Chattanooga. They're locally owned and operated and been around since 2008. Installing top quality vinyl replacement windows. You get the best price and service in the area. Top quality double pane, energy efficient windows. They look great and save you money.
Oh, I love to save money.
You'll also save money on your heating and cooling costs. Call 894-0011. 894-0011. WindowDepotChattanooga.com. WindowDepotChattanooga.com. Sales and installation professionals. You'll get a fantastic job while helping to enhance the value, appearance, comfort, and efficiency of your most valuable asset, your home. Other window providers? No way. Window Depot of Chattanooga's windows qualify for the TVA rebate. Sliding doors, gutters, soffits, fascia, garage doors, and other home improvements. If you want to save a ton, call 894-0011. WindowDepotChattanooga.com. WindowDepotChattanooga.com. Window Depot of Chattanooga. Sales and installation professionals.
McCune, Williams, and Ashley PLLC offers a full array of legal services to meet the needs of businesses and individuals. Our attorneys represent diverse backgrounds, interests, and legal emphasis, but we share one common goal: providing the highest quality legal services to our clients through the combination of our talents, experience, and expertise. In each case, we strive to tailor those services to meet each client's specific circumstances. Business law, business organization, civil litigation, commercial litigation, conservatorship and guardian law, bankruptcy law, just to name a few. With over 188 years of combined experience, McCune, Williams, Ashley PLLC is here to help you and your business succeed. MWALawFirm.com. That's MWALawFirm.com. Call 423-756-6400. That's 423-756-6400.
The Tennessee
WBLZ HD4 Ottawa, W224AZ Chattanooga, WSDG Saudi Daisy Chattanooga. Yesterday on the Herd.
Okay. If LeBron now for the next 2 years beats the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr Warriors, then even the diehard MJ guys will have to acknowledge, damn, he's beaten like dynasties 4 times.
A new day in the Herd.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You guys can laugh at me all you want.
This is the Herd. The Herd. With Colin Cowherd.
I'm setting the tone.
Best show on radio.
This is the Herd.
Broadcasting live from Los Angeles. The Herd with Colin Cowherd starts now.
This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, live in Los Angeles on iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and FS1. Jenny Taft is joining me. Again, filling in for Christine Leahy. Good morning to you. I'm just going to get to the game last night, Spurs and the Rockets, which is actually